On June 10, 1991, Jaycee Dugard was abducted from her daily walk to the school bus. Jaycee was held captive for 18 years and repeatedly assaulted. So let's grab some coffee, grab a snack, and let's investigate.
Jaycee Lee.
That Jaycee Lee Dugard, abducted almost 1 year ago, will never spend another birthday away from home.
Before we jump in, don't forget to hit that subscribe button so you are alerted every single time I post a new true crime video. Jaycee Lee Dugard was born May 3rd, 1980 in Anaheim, California. Her parents are Terry and Kenneth Slayton. Allegedly, she apparently had never met her father before this point. Terry married a man named Carl Probin a few years later, and the family ended up moving to South Lake Tahoe, California, and the couple had another child named Shayna. Jaycee was not a huge fan of Carl. She felt as if he was trying to separate her from her family, and she just overall really just didn't like him, and she didn't feel loved by him. And he was often much nicer to his real daughter, Shayna, so he just made her feel really uncomfortable and unwanted. But Jaycee was very close with her mother, and in her book called A Stolen Life, which I read in preparation for this video, Jaycee talked very often about how much she loved her mother. On the morning of June 10th, 1991, Jaycee is 11 years old, and she gets up and, has her regular morning. She has breakfast, gets ready for school, and starts walking to her school bus stop. And at this point, her mother had already left for work, and Carl was outside working on a car. And as Jaycee is walking to her bus stop, she's not really paying attention, just like none of us would have when we were, 11 years old. She was daydreaming, just kind of thinking in her head. And she notices a car slowly pulling up to the side of her and starts asking her questions. And before she could even start walking away faster or say leave me alone, she feels a intense crackle, and she goes through a severe amount of pain, and she is actually attacked with a stun gun. And before she can even fight to get up, she is very woozy and not really knowing what's going on. She is put into the car by this man and another person, and she is put in the floorboard of the back seat. A blanket is put over her, and something heavy is laying on top of her, so she cannot get up. Carl actually saw this entire thing happen, and he jumped on his bike to chase after the car in an effort to save Jaycee, and the car made so many quick turns that Carl was not able to keep up, and he actually was not able to get the license plate number either.
I've always said there was a man and a woman, that in the passenger window I could see a black-haired woman.
Jaycee actually fell unconscious during this car trip, and she actually woke up in Tahoe, California, but she had no idea where she was. And right when they got back to the location that they were going to, this couple, they put a towel over Jaycee's head, put like a blanket over her head, and brought her into a building. She had no idea where she was. The first thing that happened when Jaycee arrived to this home was she was taken into a bathroom. Her abductor told her to strip, and then he raped her, and then he handcuffed her, wrapped a towel around her, put a towel or blanket over her head yet again, and took her somewhere outside. She could feel the grass under her feet, but she didn't know exactly where she was. Jaycee soon found out that her abductor was a man named Phillip Garrido. He told her that he was being helped by Jaycee, that in order for him to fix his sex addiction, he had to have sex with Jaycee, and by her sacrificing herself, by her doing this, that he wouldn't have to hurt any other little girls. Phillip also told her that the other person who helped abduct her was his wife, but she was not ready to meet Jaycee yet, and she would meet her later on in time. And Phillip was on parole for being a sex offender. He had a prior offense, and he was actually on parole for quite some time. And he would go on what they would call runs with Jaycee, where he would take speed and he would then assault her and rape her. And this would go on for hours because he could, hold off for so long from finishing essentially, and this would go on very frequently in the beginning of Casey's abduction. After these runs, Phillip would cry and beg for Jaycee's forgiveness and talk about how terrible of a man he is and how he felt so bad for doing this to her, but yet he never had a moment of clarity just to let her go. He, would beg for her forgiveness, and she would, she talked about this in her book, how he said he felt so bad, but he said it had to happen so he could not hurt anyone else. The shed that Jaycee ended up living in for a few years was a really old, rickety shed. It really had no furniture. She would just lay on blankets on the floor, especially for the first several months. She was handcuffed the entire time, and Phillip would bring her fast food and like milkshakes and ice cream in order to try to win Jaycee over so she wouldn't fight so much when he assaulted her. And he also brought her throughout the years several cats and like little kittens, but he would get mad when the cats would use the bathroom on the floor, or if they would scratch something up, or if they would interrupt his runs. And so all of the cats went missing somehow, and we don't know exactly what happened to them, but Jaycee feels like Phillip most likely killed them. Jaycee's mother, Terry, worked so hard to find Jaycee. She put together large search parties, and she worked with police across multiple states to help find her daughter.
In my heart, I feel like it's been ripped, and I don't feel like a complete person all the time because she's not here.
I'd like to say happy birthday, Jaycee. I love you. And I love you people for being here and sharing this with me. It's very special.
Well, it's true, 11-year-old Jaycee Dugard is still missing. Support in finding her is very much all around us. Now, evidence of that is a local band and a local songwriter. For the band by the name of Perfect Circle, melodies come and go. But the group recently took on a new song that's sure to live on in the hearts and minds of the people who hear it.
The one thing that kept Terry going through all of these years is the fact that her and her daughter used to have these really cute and sweet conversations about the moon and which moon was better, and her mother liked the crescent moon and Jaycee liked the full moon. So her mother would often talk to the moon and say like, Jaycee, where are you? Help me find you. And so she would talk to the moon all the time in an effort to keep that feeling going that Jaycee was alive and that she would find her someday. Jaycee ended up meeting Phillip's wife named Nancy a few months after she was abducted, and her and Nancy always had a very uncomfortable situation because Nancy was obviously jealous of Jaycee because her husband preferred to be with young children and not her, apparently, and she was just always very odd acting to Jaycee, and so she would go really long periods of time without talking to her, and she would then feel bad and then do something nice for Jaycee, like bring her food or buy her some sort of necessity that she needed. Phillip at one point even went to prison for a month, and Nancy never thought to let Jaycee go. She basically would just spend time with Jaycee and bring her dinner every night instead of Phillip. In his backyard, there were several tents and sheds and all kinds of weird little buildings in this huge backyard that he had. And the parole officers that he had that would come and search his home about once a month or so never checked the backyard. It never occurred to them that a sex offender may be trying to hide someone in his backyard. Phillip kept Jaycee terrified by telling her if she tried to run away, he had really large guard dogs in the yard and that they would attack her on command, and he would just tell her how terrible the outside world is. But eventually he started being a little bit more lenient on Jaycee, and he let her have a TV. He actually put a TV in her shed for her, but he would never allow her to watch the news, most likely because he was afraid that Jaycee would see the news and see that her mother was looking for her. Around March 1994, 13-year-old Jaycee found out that she was pregnant. Phillip told her, I think you may be pregnant, because he was doing all of these runs on her where he was assaulting her, and he noticed that she wasn't having her period for some time. So he basically just gave her all of these tapes and all of these things he like rented from like libraries and things like that about birthing, and they watched all these shows together, and he told Jaycee, we could do this, I could do this at home. And this made Jaycee feel very anxious. So these couple months of her life, because they figured that at this time she was about 4 months pregnant, and this terrified her for the following months. She knew that if you were pregnant, you had to go to the hospital, because she saw that her mother gave birth to her younger sister in a hospital, and she was just terrified. She was afraid that Phillip was going to give away her baby. She lived these next several months in constant anxiety and fear. On August 18th, 1994, Jaycee gave birth to a baby girl. Now, I'm not going to put her children's name in this video, just out of respect to Jaycee, because it seems as if she really doesn't want people to know their names, but I feel like they probably are leaked out there, so if you have a strong curiosity, go ahead and Google it, but out of respect for Jaycee, I'm not going to say their names in this video. While Jaycee was still pregnant, Phillip allowed Jaycee to move into a different home in his backyard, a different like shed type thing, and Jaycee was much happier here because this one had a bed and it had a toilet, because I don't think I mentioned it before, but her previous shed that she was living in, it didn't have a toilet. She basically just had to use the bathroom in a bucket, and oftentimes Phillip wouldn't want to dump it out, so the whole place would smell really terrible, and she didn't have a running bathroom for a very long time. So she was thrilled just to have a regular toilet. After Jaycee had her daughter, she felt a huge relief to have someone around. She spent years of her life mostly being alone. While she was in her shed, Nancy would go to work all day and Phillip would be out, doing whatever he was doing, and Jaycee was alone almost all of the time. And so she was very happy to have her baby, and she really loved being a mother. She loved taking care of her child, and so this was really nice for her to have somebody around, somebody to take care of, and so she wasn't just sitting there all day watching the same couple shows over and over. So it's believed that this was not really the plan for Phillip. They think that maybe he wanted to kidnap Jaycee and use her for some time, and then when she got older, maybe let her go. But because she got pregnant and it was his child as well, half would be his DNA, that the abductor just decided to keep her, that he just decided to keep her there because he knew that if she got out there in the world and told, people what he did, that he would be arrested again. So Jaycee feels that way, that it wasn't in the original plan for her to get pregnant or for her to just like live there forever, that he was just going to use her when when she was younger. And to me that makes sense, because Jaycee reported that after she was pregnant, the runs happened much less frequently. So he assaulted her much less frequently, most likely because she was getting older and she had a baby. So he didn't really look at her as like a young girl anymore. A little while after Jaycee gave birth, Phillip actually started a company called Printing for Less, and he wanted to make brochures and like business cards for small companies, and he wanted the prices to be very low so he could get a lot of business right off the bat. And Jaycee noticed that the work was very sloppy. Phillip did not do a good job cutting the cards. He would make them look really sloppy and messy. He wasn't really that great on the computer. And so Jaycee volunteered to help him, and she improved his business by a lot. She made the cards look really nice and professional, and she was just really good at doing this, and she enjoyed it. So Jaycee ended up doing almost all of the work for this company, and Phillip would go out during the day and say he was like finding clients for the company, and Jaycee, on top of taking care of her daughter full time, basically ran Phillip's entire business. And he didn't, of course, pay her like a wage, but he would later give her an allowance to spend. Throughout the next few years, Phillip allowed Jaycee to move into the home that him and Nancy lived in, which was like at the front of the property. And a few years later, Jaycee gave birth to her second daughter on November 13th, 1997. And although the home was much more comfortable for Jaycee and her daughters, she still knew she was a prisoner because the windows had the like jail bars put on them. All of the windows were locked and there's no way she could even open the windows. The windows were also all covered with towels, so she still recognized that even though she was allowed a little bit more freedom, that she was still a prisoner. Phillip's behavior changed over time. He started to become much more erratic. He was listening to the walls, saying that someone in the walls was talking to him. He even had like a device apparently that allowed him to hear what was going on in the walls. He would talk about angels and how they made him do bad things, and he would, talk to Jaycee and Nancy and say that the angels made me abduct you, the angels made me do this, and I need people to know about these angels and how dangerous they are. And he started to become much more erratic and very uncomfortable with his behavior. You could tell Jaycee at this point, she was quite a bit older. She was like practically an adult, and she would get really annoyed with Phillip because he would start to, act very odd during this time and act much more odd than normal because, of course, his behavior was always not good, but it made her much more uncomfortable because he would start talking in terms of religion, and she would feel very frustrated with him because she felt as if, you found God and you fancy yourself this good religious man, then why won't you let me go? So you can tell in Jaycee's book that during this time when Phillip started to develop his religion, that Jaycee would become more and more aggravated with him. Phillip would also allow Nancy to take Jaycee out once she was more so like in her 20s, and Nancy would take Jaycee to Walmart. She would take her to thrift stores. They would sit in their car and eat fast food together. So Jaycee was able to actually leave the house and go out into public, and this made Jaycee really uncomfortable because she would go out and it always made her feel bad that nobody recognized her. But it was so many years after, and she looked, she was grown. She was a grown woman. So, of course, she looked a little bit different. And it just made her really uncomfortable that nobody ever recognized her. And I don't know if she really realized how far away Anatok was from South Lake Tahoe. But that's like, about 3 hours, I believe, away from each other. So, it made her really sad that nobody recognized her when she was out in public. And Jaycee had several opportunities to escape, but she never did. Of course, when she was out in public with Nancy, she could have, potentially said something to a customer at a store or like someone who worked at one of these stores, but she never did. She also was taken to a trailer while she was pregnant with her first daughter, and she didn't know where this trailer was, and there was nobody there, but Phillip and Nancy actually left her there for like several hours. So Jaycee could have left, but she was so scared of the outside world that she didn't know what to do. She didn't even think to leave at this point. And later on, she stated that she was not really sure why she didn't leave. She knew that she could have, but she was so afraid of the outside world that she just felt like she didn't know what to do. And Jaycee even at one point started talking to Phillip's clients on the phone, his Printing for Less clients. So Jaycee had several opportunities, and she never tried to like make a run for it because she was so scared. Phillip had really instilled many fears in Jaycee. And these mind games from Phillip never stopped. He made her change her name. He allowed her to pick the name, but he would not call her Jaycee. So she actually came up with the name Alyssa. She wanted to be called Alyssa. And later on, after, Jaycee's daughters were born, Nancy started getting jealous of Jaycee, which I knew she was. You could just tell by her behaviors. And Phillip actually made Jaycee not be her daughter's like mother, and this actually really hurt Jaycee. So Phillip wanted her to be her daughter's sisters, so she would tell them, no, I'm your older sister, and Nancy would be their mother. So again, this really hurt Jaycee, and you could tell that this made her really sad. So once Phillip had done so much reading on the Bible, developed this whole religion of these evil angels that he thought basically ruined his life, he wanted to go and start telling the public about this. And one day he took his daughters to UC Berkeley and wanted to preach. He had like brochures to hand out, and he was basically wanting to tell people about this newfound religion that he had discovered. On the campus, there were 2 officers patrolling, and they noticed that something was really off about the girls, that they were very subdued and just seemed to listen to no matter what their father was saying, and they just seemed very, like, in a way uncomfortable. They weren't being hurt by him presently, but they just knew something was off with Phillip. And they said, quote, he had 2 little girls with him, but they didn't look right. And so they actually acted like they were interested in Phillip's, religion. And this was actually a really good plan, because then he could talk to them longer. And the other officer actually went back and did a background check on Phillip and saw that he was on parole for being a sex offender. And they actually contacted his parole officer after this. So the next day, Phillip was summoned to the Concord parole office. And when, they got to this office, Phillip was separated from Nancy, Jaycee, and the 2 little girls. And by this point, they weren't really so little anymore. They were about like 11 and 15. And so they separated them, and they started asking Jaycee and Nancy all these questions. And Nancy, of course, tried to like stick up for Phillip, and Jaycee kept saying she didn't know what to do. She was scared. She told the police that she was scared, and they asked her name. She said, my name's Alyssa. And they just felt like something was wrong. And eventually Jaycee cracked and said, Alyssa's not my real name, but I'm afraid to say my real name out loud. And so they gave her a sheet of paper, and she actually wrote Jaycee Dugard on the paper. So the police were absolutely shocked by realizing this was Jaycee Dugard and that she had 2 grown daughters, because she had been missing 18 years at this point. This was in like 2009. And so they were just like shocked, and they got a hold of her mother, and she was just so excited to see her mom. She just was ecstatic. And Phillip and Nancy were arrested, and I feel like Jaycee did a really great job. She did not go to these like court cases. Her mother went and spoke for her, but she basically made the statement that she didn't want to give any more of her time to Phillip, and she wanted to live her life and make her own choices. So she made the choice to actually not go to their hearings, and I just think that that's really brave. And she didn't allow them to control her anymore. And I just find it so scary that after this, when the police were, searching his home and searching all of these little sheds and tents in the backyard, that they found out that they had been looking for children for a long time. And there were tapes where Phillip was playing the guitar in a park, and Nancy was acting like she was recording him, but she was actually like recording little girls like playing on the park. Like, it's absolutely disgusting.
Maybe you could prop it on your knee.
That's why I bought this. I thought
You can completely relax and just, there you go. See from that position.
okay.
Oh yes, you know I'm loving you every day. Said yes now every day.
So Jaycee, I feel like, is so brave. She did what she had to do to survive, and she has 2 beautiful daughters, and I just find the whole situation just really sad. And she has since written a few books. I personally read A Stolen Life in preparation for this video, and I thought it was really good, very sad. So if you are a very sensitive person like I am, it's going to be a hard read, but it's a good read, and it gives a lot of inside information on this case. And so I really liked it a lot, and I thought it was a really good book. And so I'm just really proud of Jaycee. I feel like she has come out of this, and now she's been out of captivity about 12 years now, about a little bit less than that. And you know, it's just, I'm really proud of her, and I'm proud of her for making these choices for herself and doing really good for herself and trying to keep her children private. That's why I didn't say their name in this video, because I wanted to be respectful of her wishes. But you know, Jaycee is doing very well for herself. She seems to be happy and making all these really great strides. And her mother and her actually started the Jaycee Foundation, and it has helped so many people. So I just find that really beautiful and inspiring. So thank you so much for watching this video. I really appreciate it. Again, hit that subscribe and that notification bell if you are interested in any upcoming true crime cases. I have another good one coming in just a few days. So thank you so much, and I hope you all are safe out there and have a great day. Bye.